There are those who move through life quietly, almost invisible, choosing solitude over the hum of conversation, reflection over celebration. They decline invitations, not out of arrogance or disdain, but from a subtle understanding of themselves and the world. In a society that celebrates visibility, energy, and constant engagement, their choice is often misunderstood, mistaken for shyness, awkwardness, or fear. Yet to avoid social events is rarely a rejection of humanity. It is a careful preservation of the self. Those who withdraw early understand a truth that many never see. The external world is noisy, demanding, and often exhausting. Every social gathering is an exchange of energy, a performance of presence, a negotiation of attention and approval. To enter these spaces without readiness is to risk depletion, to give more than one possesses, and to leave fragments of oneself behind in the applause or idle chatter of others. Avoidance is not weakness. It is a quiet form of self-preservation. It is a refusal to scatter one's energy for the sake of appearances, a subtle rebellion against a world that prizes quantity over quality of interaction. Psychologically, people who avoid social events are highly attuned observers. They notice details others overlook, the tension in a smile, the subtle hierarchy in conversation, the impermanence of attention. They see the patterns of human behavior not as participants, but as witnesses, quietly learning, quietly understanding. This detachment is not coldness, it is discernment. They understand that not all company nourishes the soul, that not every gathering is worth entering, and that silence often teaches more than speech. Their choice to withdraw is also a form of energy management. Human attention is finite, and their interactions are deliberate. They reserve themselves for connection that matters, for conversations that hold substance, for presence that enriches rather than drains. In avoiding superficial or overwhelming social events, they cultivate clarity, depth, and resilience. Their social life is not measured in numbers or invitations accepted, but in the quality of encounters they choose to engage with. There is also a subtle courage in this way of life. To decline is to resist pressure, expectation, and subtle judgment. They know that others may not understand, that questions will arise, that assumptions will be made. Yet they endure because they have discovered a truth more valuable than acceptance: authenticity. To show up only when one is willing, ready, and intentional is an act of quiet integrity, a rebellion against performative participation. Loneliness often accompanies this choice, but it is a loneliness with purpose. It is reflective rather than hollow, meditative rather than desperate. It allows the mind to wander, the soul to breathe, and the self to cultivate intimacy with its own depths. The world outside may press for constant connection, but the internal world offers perspective, insight, and peace that cannot be rushed or borrowed. Those who avoid social events also carry a hidden wisdom about human nature. They understand the impermanence of attention, the fragility of relationships built on convenience, and the emptiness of interactions that lack intention. They see that sociality, when untethered from authenticity, can become a trap, a place where energy is wasted, identity diluted, and self-worth tied to fleeting approval. By choosing withdrawal, they protect the integrity of their inner world, preserving the self from erosion and cultivating strength in solitude. Ultimately, the psychology of those who avoid social events is a lesson in presence and self-possession. They remind us that participation is a choice, attention is a currency, and energy is sacred. Their withdrawal is not an escape, but a conscious alignment with life on their own terms. They show us that silence, detachment, and selective engagement are not signs of deficiency, but markers of profound inner strength, emotional intelligence, and a deep understanding of the human experience. in a world addicted to visibility, activity, and constant social affirmation. Those who choose absence quietly teach a radical truth. The richest connections are not found in the crowd, but in the deliberate, intentional moments we share, and the depth we cultivate within ourselves first. The inner world as a sanctuary. For those who avoid social events, the home, the mind, or even simple solitary spaces become sanctuaries, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the self. Every social gathering carries noise, expectation, and subtle pressure to perform, to be interesting, to conform. The person who chooses absence has learned that their inner world, a quiet, unhurried landscape of thought and feeling, is infinitely more nourishing than the transient applause or fleeting attention of the crowd. Psychologically, this preference for solitude fosters self-awareness and emotional resilience. In isolation, they confront thoughts and feelings that many ignore or suppress, the anxieties, the dreams, the subtle truths that define their being. They have the courage to sit with discomfort, to reflect on experience without distraction, and to cultivate depth where superficiality might otherwise prevail. This is not avoidance in its most common sense. It is a conscious cultivation of clarity, a deliberate preservation of mental and emotional energy. Those who abstain from constant social engagement also develop a rare kind of empathy and insight. By observing human interactions from the periphery rather than participating, they see patterns others miss, the unspoken hierarchies, the hidden motivations, the subtle emotional currents that govern behavior. This perspective is quiet, almost invisible, but profoundly powerful. It allows them to choose when, how, and with whom to engage, turning each social interaction into a considered, intentional act rather than a reflexive obligation. Yet, choosing absence is not always comfortable. It requires resilience against societal pressure, the judgments of peers, and the subtle loneliness that accompanies detachment. But even this solitude has a purpose. It is a space of freedom, where the self can grow undisturbed, cultivate patience, and build a life aligned with personal values rather than external expectations. Their world may appear still to outsiders, but within it, a quiet intelligence and strength are constantly at work. A life deliberately observed, quietly honed, and intimately known. Ultimately, avoiding social events is a form of mastery. It is mastery over attention, over energy, and over self-definition. It is a declaration that presence is meaningful only when chosen, not compelled. And it is in this deliberate stillness that they find richness, clarity, and an enduring strength that cannot be measured by social metrics, applause, or proximity, but only by the depth of the life they quietly, deliberately cultivate within themselves. Not everyone finds fulfillment in crowds, noise, or constant activity. Some of us discover strength in stillness, insight in solitude, and clarity in choosing when and with whom to engage. Those who avoid social events are not hiding. They are protecting, observing, and cultivating a life aligned with their deepest self. If this reflection resonated with you, subscribe and join us as we continue exploring the hidden layers of human nature, the quiet power of introspection, and the beauty of living deliberately. Here, we honor the unseen, the unspoken, and the life lived with intention.